Thank you. That prayer was really beautiful. That I felt the Holy Spirit at the end of that because I was just thinking it's been 6 weeks. We've been doing this. And I think that for all of us, if somebody had said, no, you have to be locked away for 6 weeks, that would have seemed so overwhelming, but we've done it day by day. And I want to honor what has transpired in 6 weeks in all of your lives. And some of you have lost people that you love. Some of you have current people that are sick and you're worried about. Some of you have children that are nurses and doctors on the front lines. Some of you have grandbabies that have been born that you haven't seen yet. So it's been a lot in 6 weeks, and this has been such a beautiful place for us to land on Thursday mornings together and just share this crazy experience, this hopefully once in a lifetime experience that we've all endured. And I think, it was interesting. I would study the mystics in preparing each week, and I really felt like they were speaking to me more than they ever had, and that they really were saying, we lived through this stuff. We've seen plagues, we've seen wars, we've seen pandemics, and God is a resource to you, and God is your lifeline. And I'm offering it to you now through my writings. And so if you didn't get a chance to immerse yourself in this class as much as you would have liked, I know a lot of you were taking care of elderly parents and trying to navigate healthcare systems. And so know that the stuff will be available and is out there. And I hope that when you get time to breathe, you will go back and let the mystics speak to you too. And I'm going to answer some of your questions, and we'll get at kind of some of these things you might be wrestling with, like, I can't understand the mystics, those kinds of things. We'll go through that today. But I just want to invite you to consider that they lived through such a time as this, and that many of their writings are the ways they found God in despair. And so they are here for a reason, to be a resource to us. Their writings survived a lot of adversity. They could have been lost forever, and yet we have them today. So it's a beautiful resource. If you missed last week, I kind of did a summary of where we had been at the beginning of last week's class. And that video is posted on the class webpage and on Michelle's women's ministry emails that she sends out. So you can catch up. But I'm not going to do a review of where we've been today. I did that intentionally last week so we could spend more time on answering your questions. So I'm going to go through some of the questions that you wrote to me. And then also I want you to utilize the chat. I would love to try, if you want to put in the chat, I have something to say, or I want to share, or I have a question, I will call on you and we can try. I didn't give Michelle a heads up on this, so it might not work. But I would love to hear voices if we could. So we'll experiment with that. But first I'm going to answer some of the general questions that came in a lot. Like if I got more than kind of one, I want to address those, and then we'll get to your specific questions after that. So the kind of layout for today is going to be, I'm going to answer your questions, teach a little bit more through those questions, and then give you some practical tools to apply, like we did the snow globe and the clouds and the river, the practical tips. I'm going to give you some of those again today. And then kind of describe maybe how we live a God-centered life. I feel like I'm not qualified to teach that, but I can tell you how I try to do it, and kind of where these practices could be part of your life and how to incorporate those. And I've given you some suggestions for how you could take this material forward and keep doing it on a daily basis. So I've got handouts for you on that. We'll talk about some scriptures going forward that you could read and contemplate. And then Michelle has a fun offering for you in May that we're going to tell you about. And then we will end with a beautiful meditation. Some of you have heard it before, the loving kindness or the sending compassion meditation. And we're really going to do that for those we love in the world. And then in breakout sessions, we'll have our last breakout session, and then we'll close, and the materials will continue to be available to you. And we will continue to be in communication. You can't get rid of me. And I feel like this kind of launched some new ideas for both Michelle and I. So More is coming. Okay, one of the questions I got a lot of was, how do I quiet my racing mind? Does anyone struggle with that? I think that's why I love to teach this stuff, is because it's so hard for me, and I'm only 2 steps ahead in trying to figure this stuff out from you. The answer you're not going to like very much, and that's practice. Practice is how we do it. And so there is no quick fix to a racing mind. However, with a little practice, you can start to see some quick results. So last week, I mentioned this idea of neuroplasticity, how the brain can rewire itself. And neuroscience has found, and is proving this more every day, that we have the ability with our thinking to rewire or wire our brain. So the way this shows up in our lives is, if you often have the thought, I am doomed, and you consider how doomed you are in every aspect of your life, right? My health is doomed, my marriage is doomed, my finances are doomed, my family is doomed, then the thought that you are doomed becomes hardwired in your brain. Literally, a neural pathway fuses. And so that becomes your default reaction when something new comes into your life. So coronavirus started, and if that was your default reaction, you automatically went to, we're doomed. However, the study of neuroplasticity says that neural connection can be broken and a new one can be wired there. So with repetition of thoughts, I have hope, I have hope, I have hope, my family has hope, my health is hopeful, my finances have hope, I can survive this. When you're starting to think that hopeful thought over and over again, that forms a new neural pathway. And, there's different statistics on how many times you have to think the thought. Some people say it's in the thousands, some say it's in the hundreds, some say, 10 times, and you can start to see a difference. So neuroplasticity is still exploring what it really takes to form a new neural pathway. But I find this study of neuroscience to be incredibly hope-giving, in that if you have a predisposition towards doom, you can literally help yourself out of that by thinking new thoughts. And so this idea of how do I quiet my racing mind is step one in reprogramming your brain. Because what we're doing when we go into these quiet contemplative practices is we are training our brain to learn to be quiet. And when our brain calms down, we notice what we're thinking a whole lot more than if we never do these exercises. Then we can choose new thoughts. We can notice, oh my goodness, I do have that doomed thought going all the time. So I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to think hopeful thoughts. So you have the ability to correct it if you get quiet to notice it. So that's why this is important. And I think of racing minds like a hamster wheel. Like, we just never get off of it, and we don't even realize we're doing it, right? It's like, it's just our normal. And it goes faster and faster. And then when you finally get off, you're like, oh man, that was awful. I was going really fast on that thing. I couldn't get off. And so what contemplation offers us is a way of training your brain that it's okay to be quiet for a bit. And as people of faith, that's when we feel the presence of God, because we quit thinking our own thoughts. This is not new stuff, right? The placebo effect in medicine has spoken to this for decades, right? That if you think the medicine is working, oftentimes it works. So the power of your thinking is totally the study of placebo effect. The phenomenon of that, the power of positive thinking in the 80s, that whole genre of self-help literature was on this very thing. And then in the 90s, we had Stephen Covey, basically preaching to all of us of control your thinking, and that your mindset is everything. And then now we have law of attraction teachers saying, make a vision board and manifest your dreams. And right, that's all the same language, just different labels of neuroplasticity. And now neuroscience is proving it, which it always makes me feel better when there's like tangible evidence that this stuff works. I'm more motivated to do it if I know that it's going to work. And so that's what we're doing. We're talking about all the same things, but we're doing it through contemplation in a spiritual realm, in the context of spirituality, in the context of trying to feel the presence of God more than we ever have. And so what that does is, just like that default reaction becomes, I have hope, your default reaction becomes, God is present with me. And then when you are in adversity, you have trained your brain to remember God is always with you. God is always with you. You don't need people to remind you of that, or you don't need to find a book that gives you hope, or you don't need to, have somebody give you hope, external validation. You've got it already because you worked with your brain to develop that default. So that's why working to quiet our thoughts is so important. And I think worry is so part of this, because we get on that worry wheel and we don't even realize we're doing it, and we're worrying about silly things, right? Like toilet paper. And then we're thinking, oh my gosh, have we all lost our minds? It's just because we're in that mode of our minds racing all the time, and we haven't trained our brains to calm down and think clearly and rationally. So with God, I think about my worries come when I think I'm driving the car and God's in the back seat, right? When I think I'm in control, that's when I notice I'm really worrying. But when I let God drive the car and I ride along, the scenery is amazing. The views are incredible. My stress level is so much less. I don't have to deal with all of the stuff of figuring out where we're going. I just enjoy the ride. And to me, quieting your racing mind is like asking God to drive the car instead of thinking I have to drive the car. And we all know when we're driving, we're watching the speed limits and we're dodging other drivers and we're navigating and wondering how we're going to get there. And I have to figure it all out. How great does it feel to just be a passenger? Because that's really what we are anyway, right? And some of you in the chat, I love reading the chats when I catch up after class. Some of you got to this very quickly in our first class, I think, or an early class of like, we're not ever in control. Why do we think we're in control? And so part of quieting your racing mind is that once you get off the hamster wheel, then you're like, oh, wait a minute. No. I got lost there. I forgot and thought I was in control and had to figure it all out. So that's what we're working on with these practices. So you can learn to do it. When I'm coaching somebody on this, I am always surprised how quickly the switch flips and they are like able to get quiet faster than they thought. So the person that says, I'm impossible, I'm going to be your worst client, I'll never figure this out. I'm like, no, I was my worst client. And you will be able to figure this out. And so it really is doable. It just takes practice. But I think that what we've talked about, like when we were talking about surrender and allow, that's really where you find inner peace. That's really the let God drive the car and you enjoy the view, and then do what God asks you, go where God takes you. So as people of faith, we have to practice surrender and allowing. Remember Thomas Keating's story of the nun that said she was trying to do centering prayer, and she said, in 20 minutes of sitting, I've had 10,000 thoughts. And Thomas Keating said, that's great. You've had 10,000 opportunities to return to God. And then he said, the only thing you can do wrong is to quit trying, is to get up and quit trying. And so if you're frustrated with racing thoughts, just love yourself through that. Love your precious little busy mind. Look at it like the little hamster on the wheel. It's just your busy mind trying to keep you safe. And, instead really return to God with every time your mind wanders. So, I think the Teresa of Avila prayer that many of you really loved and let me know that, the let nothing disturb the silence of this moment with you, oh God. That's it. If we are praying that, then I think we'll make progress. I really do. And think of it like building a muscle or training a puppy, right? You got to be consistent. We know that. And we don't like that. We wish they'd figure it out on the first try. But consistency is what's so important. And you're training your brain. Okay, another question was, how do I set aside time to sit in silence? How do I keep this going, especially as we return to normal programming? And we all know this to be true, but I'm just going to remind us, what we make a priority is what happens in our day, right? So if this is important to you, then we just have to put it at the top of the priority list in the course of our day. We can't let it get away. We can't let it slide. And it might not be a priority for you right now. You've got other priorities, and this will wait, and that's absolutely fine. But if you're feeling like this is something I really want to get, then we just have to make it a priority. And then the time will appear. If it's truly a priority to you, you will find the time. But I will also say, you know me by now, that I'm a realist, and I go in cycles where it's a priority and then it's not. And then the wheels fall off my life and then it's a priority again and then it's not. So allow yourself to kind of have those cycles, observe yourself, notice, oh yeah, life is a whole lot better. My faith feels a whole lot stronger when I'm making time with God a priority. We all kind of know that already, I think. We just don't know why we don't do it. So just have to make it a priority, and the time will appear. And this question made me remember Cynthia Bourgeau's line that we read in this class of, God is always present. We are the ones that are absent, and he is yearning for you to sit with him. And that one just makes it a priority for me, right? That quote of hers is like, yep, okay, that's top of the list. So God's present. We're the ones that are absent. And he's just yearning for us to sit with him. And that's all it takes. We don't have to overwork this stuff. I think that's what the mystics taught me too, is, you're so in your head, Ginger. Move it to your heart and just sit and just feel and just sense, and stop working so hard at it and stop thinking so much. So they might have that message for you too. The next question is one that I loved. And I got a few of these. Why isn't contemplative prayer taught in mainline churches? I think that's a great question. And I don't know the answer. So tell Adam Hamilton to bring this up with me and we can have a chat about it. And maybe I could preach on it. But what I found, Adam's probably the most open to it of the pastors I know. When I found this stuff in seminary, I could not believe that I had grown up in 40 years of Methodism and had never heard any of this. And I know some of you are having that same reaction from this class. And I love those emails. When you tell me, why haven't I heard about this before? That just fuels my fire to do more of it. But I felt the same way. I don't know. So my theories, I have a few theories on it. I think that silence is uncomfortable and awkward. I think that in our society, I think we never learn to sit in silence. We are quieted as students in school. We are shushed a lot in church, but that's different, right? That's like you're doing something wrong, so sit quietly. And then it feels like a punishment. Quiet feels like a punishment. And so then we don't long for that, right? Because I was doing something wrong and that was my punishment, and I don't want to do that if it's a punishment. So I think we just kind of grow up with this embedded feeling that there's something bad about silence, and we're not even really conscious of it. I think also, as I have led meditation classes and held space for people to be in silence, it's not easy to do as a leader. And so the leader has to be pretty comfortable with silence themselves to be able to lead. So if you think about in our churches, the pastors really need to be trained deeply and truly practicing it themselves before they can lead the congregation to it, because it is uncomfortable. And holding space for people to feel the Holy Spirit and be silent requires a pretty self-assured person. And the only way that you gain that is by actually doing it yourself. And so I feel like I'm getting better at it, but it's taken me years of practicing it myself for doing it. And I still have a long way to go. I watch other people lead meditations and think, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So I think that's part of the problem, is we don't have the training. We don't have the comfort level with silence. And I think that congregants have to get more comfortable with it too. I feel like so Michelle told me we have 485 people registered for this class, which is amazing. And I hope everybody is watching this and practicing these practices. And then those people go into their churches and say, hey, can we do some of this? This is changing my life. I'm feeling closer to God than I ever have before. And that starts kind of the movement, right? I think that's how we get it into mainline churches. But I will tell you, I think that it's always been a bit of a threat. And I think that in the medieval church, it was certainly an economic threat. That you could sit with God in silence under a tree meant you weren't coming into the church to find God, which meant we can't pay the bills in the cathedral, which meant, oh, let's shut that down as soon as possible. So I think we're overcoming some resistance. It's interesting for me to watch the yoga meditation kind of movement come into North America and watch the Christian resistance to it, right? Because you know, I'm sure some of you have seen the anti-Christian messages that yoga is dangerous. It's worshiping other gods. And I will tell you, it was in yoga in the last 10 minutes of Shavasana, long before I went to seminary, where I felt a calling from God. Yeah, I was in a yoga class feeling the presence of God more than I had ever felt in a church building. Sorry, pastors. But that was the truth. And so I think that we are starting to grow in consciousness of this as we explore practices like meditation, and, you know, the Shavasana and yoga where you're just laying flat and it's the last 10 minutes and I just use that as prayer time and connection with God time. And so it was a beautiful Christian practice for me in a yoga class. But I think what we see in the fundamental faiths denouncing yoga is the same resistance that the mystics were experiencing in the medieval church, which is, what is everyone gravitating toward? Because they're not, and our church is getting smaller and yoga classes are getting bigger. Uh-oh, that's a threat. We better shut that down. So just keep that all in mind as to why we don't hear more about this. There's more going on because it certainly works. We all can speak to that. And based on all of you, I can see that we're hungry for it. I was so hungry for it. And I think you all are too. And it's ancient Christianity. We're just kind of bringing it back. So I certainly plan to do more on this. You have solidified my the fire in my soul, as Jeremiah said. So we will see more of this. And that leads me to another question that was a really good one, which is, does silence mean we acquiesce to bad things happening? You know, if we are practicing silence and if we are sitting with God in contemplation, are we not in action? Are we not taking action on things? And this is why I love my people, because you send me these really good, tough questions. Does Jesus want us silent? And especially when it comes to social justice and religious scandals and politics? These were your questions. I love you guys. So here's my answer on that today, because I might change the more I think about it. But I think that we are called to use our voices, our talents, our resources, our networks of people, our money, our power, our privilege. I do think we are called as people on this Zoom call today to use all of that to be the hands and feet of Jesus on this earth more than ever before. However, I think we have to sit in silence first. And the reason is, I think that you get your divine assignment of how you contribute to these things when you're quiet with God. And so I think the silence with God comes first, and then the action. And Richard Rohr named his center in New Mexico the Center for Contemplation and Action. And I think that, and I think he might say action and contemplation, but I think that gets at, they're both necessary. Contemplation and action are both necessary. And what the mystics were doing was rocking the boat, right? They were rocking the boat of the way things were going politically and religiously at the time. But they sat in silence with God first. And so I think they teach us that to get our marching orders from God, we gotta get quiet first. I know that's how it played out in my own life. I didn't really figure out my purpose and calling until I started practicing silence and quit talking, quit driving, which you can imagine is hard for me, right? So you know me now. But that deep knowing already in you, you have a deep knowing of how you could help. You already do. That's why you get fired up about it. But I think checking in with God and making sure that's how God would help you serve is a deeper knowing. right? And then you find the confidence to really go out there and do it because you feel like this is your divine assignment. This was given to you. And we only get that when we get quiet. I have not found another way except in silence with God and really surrendering. So a few comments and questions came in around slowing down and how these contemplative practice seem to calm us down and slow us down. At the same time, we're in quarantine, slowing us down literally and physically. And so there's a fear in your comments of what happens when we go back. And some of us are dreading going back. And I do think, my coaching calls, we were all talking about this. Because some of us have loved this time. And I do think that's a huge window into your true self and doing some introspective work on what did I learn from this? And what do I know to be true now? And how am I going to live differently? I think some of us have the tendency to, when the gates open, we're going to run again. And we've got to check ourselves and watch that a little bit. But I think the mystics kind of give us permission for all of it, right? Because some of them grew up in wealth and family businesses and textiles, and some of them grew up in poverty, and yet they all were seeking God and seeking connection with God. So I think that no matter your pace, you're learning practices that you can take with you anywhere. I also think the mystics give us permission to cry out and wrestle and doubt with God, just as the Psalms do. So I have the Psalms on your reading list for summer reading, like the kids have summer reading, you have summer reading. And I think the Psalms is a really good place to go back and feel all these feelings. Give yourself permission to feel all the things you're feeling right now, because we are in such a unique time. And I really see this as an opportunity to go deeper in your faith. But I think that you'll find the pace you have found might be your new pace, right? You might have found some deeper connections in this time that you will be able to hold on to, and because you decide and you choose how you live. And so this time you've had with God, keep that, protect that, treasure that. To me, that's the most important thing we've all had in this time. And I think that this also gets at something that some of you wrote to me about, which is this: is God love, or is God judging and keeping a scorecard and wrath? And that's such a big question. And I'm not going to go totally into that today, but I will honor your desire to know more about that. And it's on my list of potential stuff that we talk about in the future. What I have come to believe is that God is a God of love. And I have dropped the wrathful, scorekeeping, judging imagery, as we talked in class 3-ish, I think. And now I sit in a force of love when I am in contemplation. If I have that wrong, I might have it wrong, but I will say it has made me a more compassionate, gentle, kinder spirit to live in the world by sitting in the presence of a God of love. So if I have it wrong, I think it's helping me be a better person. So then I question, is it so wrong? Whereas when I sit with a wrathful, scorekeeping, judging God, I have a lot more anger in my life. I have a lot more angst. I snap at people faster. I don't like the person that I am. And so I would ask you, with your imagery of God, how does it shape the person you are into the world? And how does it shape how you treat others? And then work back from that. Okay. And I promise we'll talk more about that in the future, because it's a big, big existential question. And on the topic of unconditional love, this is where you've heard my story probably of in seminary, I had to write on unconditional love and preach on it. And so this was the straw that broke my camel's back, because this is where I was like, I've got some issues with, I have to earn God's love in my head, embedded deeply, right? I had that mentality that I was never good enough. And so unconditional love is a big thing I've studied a lot, because it was my own kind of wrestling. And my working definition right now of unconditional love is that we can't do anything to earn more of God's love, and we can't do anything to lose God's love, right? That's unconditional love. So the more righteous I am, I don't get more love from God. It's not like debits and credits. The more horrible I am, I don't lose God's love. He may be disappointed in me and had hoped for more from me, but this idea of earning and hustling to earn points with God, that's not unconditional love. That's conditional love. That was my old thinking. My thinking now is just, you have it. So relax into it and enjoy it, and then share it with others. There's nothing you can do to lose God's love, and there's nothing you can do to earn more of it. You've already got it. And accepting that is hard. It's taken me years, obviously. And this is where the self-compassion work that I teach is really, really important to me on this, because I think it's all necessary to change that mindset. But I really think when you get into the space of God is love and love only, and that's what I read in the mystic writing, that's what they were discovering, then you relax into it, and then you share that love in a more beautiful way than you ever have before. And then our service to God, our work for God, comes from a place of honoring that love instead of trying to earn that love. Does that make sense? Okay. It's hard. This would be so good in person, this discussion. So put comments. I know I see it going a bit on comments, so I'm going to try to catch up. And then here, another point that you made is the mystics are hard to read. Yeah, they are. And somebody said, am I doing something wrong because I'm not connecting with them? And one of you said, I'm going to listen to Ginger's version and not do any of the readings. I think that's great. I loved that. It made me laugh. And that's why I try to make it relevant for you. That's why I try to bring the writers to life with the background stories. And that's why I try to make it a little more colorful and interesting. Because if you just pulled this book off the shelf, it is confusing stuff. And so I think that's kind of part of why we don't talk about this in mainline churches, is because it's kind of difficult stuff to teach, and it required a lot of time for me to do the research, and pastors just, are putting out so many fires that's part of why this doesn't get talked about more, because it is a deep kind of research project to really start to understand them. So don't feel bad. The other thing that's happening is we're continuing to translate these writings. They were in mostly European languages. And that's the work of Richard Rohr and Cynthia Bourgeault today, our modern day United States mystics, is they're trying to kind of bring these languages into our vernacular and introduce us to the mystics in that way. It's like Shakespeare and poetry. The more you read it, the more it makes sense and it gets easier to read. The mystics are very much like that. The more you read it, the more you are like, oh, great, I know what she's saying now. And I get Julian of Norwich deeper than I ever have before. And every time I go back, I get so much more out of it. So in that sense, I think they're still kind of living with us, speaking to us. But give yourself lots of time on this. If you're interested in it, but it didn't click, don't worry about it. That's, all this stuff is going to stay online on my website. And that's one reason that, I host it there, so you can keep coming back to it. The videos will still be there. The materials will still be there. So give yourself time to come back. Why were they called the mystics in the first place? I liked this one, and I meant to cover this, so I'm so glad you asked it. The word mystic kind of makes us think mystery today. And if you were thinking that, you're on the right track. It's the mystery of God is kind of how we look at that word now. It's mysterious encounters with God, kind of could be how you use it. But the word history is from Old French. This was happening in multiple regions. So we had the Old French word mystique. We had a Latin word mysticus and a Greek word mystikos. But all of them were this idea of hidden, secret, concealed. And the idea at the time was God is hard to figure out. And so God is a mystery, and there's a hidden meaning or a concealed secret. If we find God, we get the secret to life. And so that's kind of where the word mystic came from. What it has been twisted into is dark magic, kind of, or like mysterious in a dark way. Like witchcraft and wizardry, and the medieval church kind of put the mystics in a witchcraft bucket, and then that gave it a label that made people really uncomfortable or felt like it was something dangerous. I think of it as mystery in the sense of exploration, right? Like it's a mystery what's on the other side of that mountain, but it might be the most beautiful lake we've ever seen. And so I don't know what's over there, but it could be amazing. That's the mystery I give to the word mystic, of exploration and seeking more than something that's a threat. And again, back to, we know why humans behave the way they do. It's just fear. But yeah, I'm glad you asked about the origin of the word mystic. That's where it comes from. And all faiths have mysticism. Islam has Sufism, which is their kind of mystic encounters with God. Let's see, who else does? I had a list. Judaism has has mystics. Actually, Jesus was probably a Jewish mystic. And yeah, I'm blanking. I know Buddhism speaks of mysticism. I have sheets all over this wall of my office, so I'm looking at it. Hinduism has mysticism too. So, part of this is any encounter with God gets a special little thing in every religion. And so that's what it is. And for us, it's an encounter with God in our Christian world. I think you could see the persecution of mysticism in Jesus's life when he was accused kind of magic. Like, how are you healing these people? And you're not following the rules, and stuff is happening we can't explain, right? That was Jesus being questioned for this mysterious stuff he was doing. But I think one of the things that's interesting to me is if you asked somebody to describe love, it's hard to describe, right? Actually, do it in the chat. Describe love. How would you describe it to a child or grandchild if they said, what is love? How would you describe it? And I'll catch up on some of the, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I love your comments. How would you describe love? A security blanket. I love that. Yeah, faith in action, opening my heart. A warm hug. Grandparents, being surrounded by a warm, accepting, nurturing hug. Exactly. Yeah. Climbing into Jesus' lap, the thing that connects us. Non-judgment. Oh, what good definitions of love. Tenderness. Highest form of giving oneself with no strings attached. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. Warm feeling. Being seen and accepted just as I am. Yes. Friendship on fire. Oh, you guys are good. You're modern day mystics. Yes. See how we all have a different definition of love, overwhelming joy. None of these have been repeated yet, right? So it's our own experience. A human desire to know and be loved in God's image. Oh, there you go. That's perfect, Christy. A human desire to know and be loved in God's image. Whew, that's deep. I like that. Yeah, all of these are so good, you guys. But see how hard it is to capture? Because it's different to all of us, because it's a feeling. It's something we just know. Love. But it's hard to explain. God is the same way, right? God is the same way. That's this mystery we're exploring, is that we can't just put an easy definition around it. Confirmation of good life. Yeah. Oh, I love you guys. You're deep thinkers. Can't wait to do more of this. Yeah, so that's kind of this idea of mystic or mystery. I want you to sit in a place with it where it's safe and exploring, and it's not threatening or scary. Okay, one of your questions was, why do we worry so much? And the answer is because you're human. Because worrying is part of how you survive as a human. And we are so grateful to our ancestors for worrying, because they stayed in the caves and they reproduced, and we're here today, right? So if we didn't have worrying, we wouldn't have humanity, because it's our survival mechanism. It's how God made you to stay alive. So there is not something wrong with you if you are a worrier. What we are going to try to develop is that you're a peaceful worrier. Right? So I changed the peaceful warrior to worrier, peaceful worrier. That you worry because you're human, but you have tools to return to a sense of peace and not go down the abyss or the rabbit hole of worrying and upsetting. Yeah, it's wrong if it paralyzes you. Exactly, because we know that the more we worry, we literally can make ourselves sick. And we certainly take out joy and fun from our life on earth if we're missing the present moment when we're worried about the future, right? We all know this to be true. So be grateful for that amazing brain of yours. And I'm going to share my screen again real quick to remind you, in case you joined after week 1, slideshow. This is our beautiful brain, right? And the parts that we're talking about today in worry are this blue section called the amygdala and the limbic system and the fear center of our brain. And this little guy right down here, I don't know if you can see my, I'm pointing with my pointer, but I don't know if you can see it. So that little dark blue circle is our sweet little amygdala, and it's working hard, especially right now. And so it is constantly saying, danger, danger, these are crazy times, you're at risk. And our prefrontal cortex, that orange part, is the part of our brain that says, hey, okay, we're going to be okay. We can make a plan. We can do something about this. We have some agency. We have some control here. And it's important, I think, to understand that your brain is just a human, beautiful brain, and the amygdala keeps us alive. But the amygdala is the same part of the brain we share with reptiles that are darting in and out of the woodpile, right? They don't have the prefrontal cortex that helps them reason. They're just living scared. And I think of that, that's what our life is like if we don't kind of tap into our prefrontal cortex every once in a while to say, okay, wait, we can make a plan. I can think my way through this. So there's in functional, notice what is larger. I like that. That's right. That's very good. That the amygdala is small and the prefrontal cortex is large. Yes, Lizzie the lizard lives in the amygdala. I love that. So good. Okay, so functional MRIs, and I know some of you are in the healthcare industry, and functional MRIs are so fascinating because now we can put somebody into an MRI machine and then ask them questions and have them do activities and see where the brain lights up. So they're called fMRIs, functional MRIs. But what's interesting with some of the neuroscience that I have found on worry is that when they create a fear scenario for the person in the MRI machine, they see their amygdala light up. And in a person that's chronically worried, that amygdala is enlarged. It's larger than it is in a non-worried person, or maybe normal, as they call it. But when you help somebody name a feeling, like I am scared of COVID-19, while they're in that functional MRI machine, the amygdala calms down. And so naming our feelings has been proven to quiet our amygdala. And I think for people of faith, this is why prayer and talking to other people and talking to God has an effect on our brain, because we name what's going on when we talk to God and when we pray, or when you talk to a pastor, or when I work with people, when you talk to a spiritual director, you're naming the fear, the feeling in a safe place, and your amygdala can calm down, and your brain goes into that prefrontal cortex to start to help you instead of living in the fear. So you'll hear this over and over again, right, from psychologists of name the fear, name the fear. That's why, because there's science showing if you name it, if you talk to somebody about it, and that's why Michelle is so good about building community in women's ministry, because we have to remember we're not alone, we have each other, and it literally helps our brains to share what's going on in our lives. So if someone told you that worrying meant you didn't have enough faith, I don't agree with them. Send them to talk to me. I'm not sure I'll convince them of anything different, but that's not true. You worry because you're human, and you have faith to help you with your human worries. It's not mutually exclusive. It's not that you're not doing something right because you're worried. Of course you're worried. So when you recognize your worry and go into your faith, I think your brain says, oh, okay, we're going to be okay. I feel like just that act of going to God literally helps your brain quit firing the alarm system. So that's why this is also important, right? This is why it has a life application. Some of you took away the line, less thinking, more loving, that I tell my clients a lot. Let's do less thinking, more loving, right? I hope that sticks with you too. It's yours to take, because it's really, really important. Less thinking, more loving. You can't go wrong with that. All right, so where do we go from here? This is, what do we do with all of this? This is a question that some of you asked, and it's such a good one. How do we live a God-centered life, and what does that mean? So I think that we've addressed some of this today as I answered questions, but I also think there's some very intentional things you can do to keep God at the center of your life. Because of our racing minds and our worry and our human tendencies, we have to be really intentional to come back to keep God at the center. So I've got some handouts for you. I'm going to put on the class webpage, and these are, I put onward on the top of them, which means this is kind of going forward with what you've learned. One of them is an idea that one of your classmates, Brooke, actually gave to me, because she said that she put everything into a notebook from this class, and she was going to try to like work on something every day of the week going forward through the summer. And I was like, that's a great idea. And so when I went back to look at all of the practices, there are 7 of them. And so that was pretty cool. I didn't even realize how many that we had been doing in this class. So there's 7. So I made this sheet for you, and it basically gives you 1 a day for the week. So Monday, centering prayer. Tuesday, heart breathing prayer. Wednesday, the welcoming prayer, where you start to welcome the worry and the bad feelings you have. And Thursday, the Tonglen prayer, where we go into compassion. And I had a question on that I'm going to come back to. Friday, observing nature with Jesus. So if you can go for a walk, do so. If you sit at a window and look out your window, do that. Saturday, Lectio Divina, and I'm going to give you some scriptures to try. Sunday, a journal, a conversation with Jesus. Remember that worksheet where we put our names into the scripture for one of them, and then it was Jesus asking, how can I help you? And you felt the response. So this, you can make your own rhythm, but this gives you kind of inspiration of how you might structure a week, and just take 1 a day and 10 minutes, right? It doesn't have to be a big production. And we all have 10 minutes, again, if we make it a priority. So that is one way to keep God at the center, is just intentional practice every day. And you will find things you like better than others in these practices. Don't feel bad about that. Don't force it. That's why I give you a bunch of them, because you might find 1 or 2 that land with you that are your go-to practices. That's all you need. You don't need to be doing all 7. Right now you're exploring them to find the ones you like, and then boil that down to the ones that resonate with you the most. And just, that's your toolbox. That's your toolbox to stay into a God-centered place. The scriptures, another onward worksheet, is the scriptures of the Bible that are the most quoted by mystics and the most kind of mystical in language. So if you are loving this new way of connecting deeply with a God of love and feeling God's presence, I made a list of, 7 books of the Bible that kind of are the most compelling in the mystical journey. So the Gospel of John, we talked about that. That's the gospel that has the most God of love, union with God kind of language. The book of Psalms, of course, that's what the monks and nuns were reciting every day, were Psalms. And so prior to their mystical experiences with God, they knew the Psalms. They had memorized the Psalms. That was their spiritual practice, was citing the Psalms. First letter of John, that's where we have the scripture, God is love. And the letter to the Romans, I think I've told you in some previous classes, one of my seminary professors from Zimbabwe said Romans is the 911 for a Christian. When you're in crisis, go to Romans. And that has stuck with me, that he said that. The letter to the Philippians, Song of Songs and Solomon, which you got a taste for in that beautiful springtime poem this week. And then the book of Genesis, you also read as the creation story. So those are our scriptures to practice Lectio Divina going forward, and to kind of give you some guidance of where do I start with my own journey with all of this. Start with the Gospel of John and the Psalms, and you've got summer reading wrapped up. Then the third thing is, what would the mystics teach us today? And so I just kind of took a stab at this. So I found a quote by Karl Rahner, which is pretty interesting. He said, "The Christian of the future will be a mystic or will not exist." And he died in 1984. And so he was beginning to see the decline of mainline churches. He was seeing this politicized versions of Christianity, which in 2020, we are very much in the mud of that. And, I think that it's interesting that he thought the future of the church needed to be more of this kind of stuff, which I certainly felt that vibe in your comments as well. So I put that quote on this sheet so you have it. But here are the elements as I see it. And I would love to know your feedback on this too. But practice contemplation. Be still and remember God is God. And in silence, we tune into that loving presence. I won't read them all so that you can do it on your own. But return to the teachings of Jesus, right? Compassion, human rights, grace, mercy, forgiveness, care of the poor and marginalized. Those were definitely themes coming out of the mystics. Remember, the mystics were saying the church wasn't doing that. And so they were starting, Teresa and John started their own movement back to taking care of the poor. Move from head to heart. We've talked about that a lot. You know what that means, feeling, sensing it, a faith that you alone can count on. That's the point. Allow human feelings to coexist with faith, right? You have permission to be human and have a beautiful faith at the same time. The mystics wrote a lot on that, and that's where the Psalms help us. Dark nights of the soul are an opportunity to grow closer to God. See them as such. They're hard, they're awful, but on the other side is so much growth and learning and a deeper connection to God. Thich Nhat Hanh has this quote of, "Because of the mud, we have the lotus." And so because of the mud, we have this amazing flower. And so I that's coming to me a lot in this time of quarantine. And I think some of you have read that I've written, my grandpa had a saying of, we wouldn't appreciate the spring if we didn't have the winter. And I think about that every spring. I think about it every winter to get through the winter. And then every spring I think, oh my gosh, he's so right. He's so right. We would take it all for granted if we didn't have some pain. So dark nights help us a lot to keep perspective. And then this idea of waiting for it. You know, the mystics, Teresa of Avila waited 20 years to have that heartwarming experience with God. John Wesley did too. His heart strangely warmed moment was after years and years of ministry and dedication to God, and he longed for that moment, and then he got it. So be patient for that. And on that, the video that a lot of you commented on was the Julian body prayer. Julian of Norwich's body prayer video. It was in an earlier week, I think week 3. I'll bump it up and put it on this week so you don't have to scroll through to find it. But she did this beautiful prayer, and then the video I have for you is somebody reenacting it. But it has 4 concepts: await, allow, accept, attend. And then there's body movements with it. So await, and then allow, and then accept, and then attend. And I'll let you watch the video and do it. But that, I've been doing it myself during this class, and that embodiment is really, really powerful. So as we talk about wait for it, you don't have to have the mystical experience with God every time you sit down. You know, if you're trying to tune into the presence of God, but you don't feel it, there's nothing wrong with that. It's the making the efforts, the yearning. God is yearning for you to try, right? That's what we're doing. But then this idea of await, allow, accept, and attend, I think that might help you with developing patience a little bit too. All right, and so one more thing on where do we go from here? 2 more things, actually. One more is I am going to put a link to a book list that I created on Amazon, because I started doing it on our webpage, and it was getting long and cumbersome. And then I realized, I could give you one link and go to Amazon. And I realized some of you are not big fans of Amazon right now, and I'm sorry. You can buy it from a local bookseller, but Amazon has this feature where I can make a list. So if you want to take down the books that you like and then buy them from a local bookseller or the library, that's awesome. I don't mean to be promoting Amazon, but it is technology right now that helped enable me to get the book list to you. So, and if you want to buy them on Amazon, it's just one click. There are a lot of books out there, all the books that we did, and then some others like Barb Rouse, who some of you heard at the women's conference. She's got a beautiful Bible study on Joshua, Slaying the Worry Battle. I put that link on there. Max Lucado has a beautiful book, Anxious for Nothing. I know some of you have done studies in women's ministry with these books. So I put those out there too. So there's a lot of resources on worry and anxiety, on something for everybody, I think. Okay, the other exciting thing going forward is that Michelle is going to offer a class in May, and this class is for all of you to continue being together. And Michelle is going to lead it, and it's called Reset. And I just love her idea for this. It's a way to apply the work we've all been doing. It's a way to start thinking about how do we use this time as a reset to re-enter, and how do we come out of this as the people we hope to be. So Michelle, I'm going to let you say a little bit more about the May class, then we'll come back and I'll close us in a meditation.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks. So yes, Ginger is giving us incredible tools to go forward. I love your phrase, onward. So that is awesome. I have been thinking, though, just what is next? What is a good conversation to have after this incredible one? And it seems that the conversation might be worth turning toward what do we do when we kind of enter back into the idea of leaving our homes, of perhaps gathering. Of course, the church is all about doing this in a slow and safe and mindful, thoughtful, careful, with great thought put into it. And so nothing is going to be in a hurry. In women's ministry, we're going to follow that lead, and we are going to continue to meet online. So for May, a 4-week study, and we're going to consider the lessons that we're learning. And there are 4 topics, and I'm just going to look at my notes here to make sure I say them right. So the first week, we'll talk about the lessons that we're learning about the value of relationship and connection. And so we'll look at some personal experiences. I'm going to give you some hokey examples from my home. I'm going to point us to some scripture that might teach us about this. This is important to God. And so it is important to us as well. And I know for me, it has been vital during this time. So relationship and connection, we'll dig into a particular biblical passage, and then we'll have some guided breakout discussion around that. The second week, what are we learning about slowing down and letting go? And so, of course, we have considered lots of great things here with Ginger. What else might we be learning about the value of slowing down and letting go, and maybe not returning to busyness just for the sake of being busy? What are we learning in our third week? We'll talk about what are we learning about care for ourselves and others. And again, each week we'll have a biblical story to consider. What does God say about this? And what can we learn to put in our, on our calendar, or in our bags, or in our purse, or whatever it is as we move forward. And then finally, the 4th week of May, we're going to talk about what we're learning about the importance of laughter and fun. Because I don't know, but I've been needing some laughter about once a day. So hopefully we're going to be able to continue forward as a group, as a community, and experience all that. I'm going to try to work best with those breakout groups. We're learning every single minute on Zoom how to do that. And so the registration form, I'll make that link available to you all. And there will be an opportunity for you to say, I could help kind of guide a breakout group. And so then I'll give you some tips and talking points and some guidance along the way, just so that we might see if we could even build a little bit deeper sense of community on this online platform. So yes, we're going to keep Zooming it during the month of May, and I hope you all will join in that.
Awesome. Oh, Michelle, that sounds so good and so needed. And what a beautiful way to spend May as we all kind of figure out how this is all going to work going forward. So I love that. And I'm going to answer one question I forgot. And if you have any other questions, please let me know in the chat. And, when is the new class, Michelle? Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sorry. So it will start May 7th. So the dates are, we're going to stick with Thursday mornings. We'll still record it and make it available for those that are unable to meet on a Thursday morning, but it's going to be May 7th, May 14th, May 21st, and May 28th, still at the same time, 9:30. And so that's the study for May.
Awesome. And Liz, the book, the Bible study on Joshua was called Slaying the Worry Battle by Barb Rouse, Rouse, I believe. It's really good.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Roose, Roose.
Thank
Barb
you.
Roose.
Okay, so if you have a question, pop it up there before we go to breakout sessions. Do we need to sign up for the next class?
Oh, yes. So after this class, you'll get a recap email, just like we've been doing, with a link to this video today with Ginger and the class materials that Ginger is providing, and then also a link to sign up for the next class. And I'll put that there a couple of times just to see if it's something that you want to do, and you can register online. And so, yes, you'll all receive that.
Awesome. Yes, Tonglen is what I wanted to come back to, Cheryl. So I think, let's see, when did we do that? We did that in, I think, week 4, the dark night of the soul, maybe. That the Tonglen practice is, you have notes on it. You have an instruction sheet. It is, it's an interesting practice because it's this idea of taking out pain from other people and holding it for them, and then breathing with your breath what they need to feel relief. So if you were on live that day, we all did it, and I felt the power through the screen of all of us really imagining somebody that we saw struggling, and we kind of energetically took that away from them, and we put it in this vacuum, and then we sent that away, and then we gave them peace and love. And so Tonglen is a beautiful practice. However, it is kind of a heavy practice. And some of you, or I think one of you asked, why don't we take it, what's the purpose of taking on the pain? And the full version of it, Pema Chodron, Pema Chodron, is a Tibetan nun. She teaches it the most beautifully I've ever heard it. And so I went back and listened to some webinars that I had done of hers on it. And one of the things that really struck me this time, I was searching for what is the point of taking on somebody else's pain, because the full version is you breathe it into your body and you hold it for them, and then you release it for both of you. And the idea is that it trains us to not be so afraid of fear. And so what was interesting is I have always felt this, like, I don't want to take on somebody else's stuff. I'm barely taking care of my own stuff. And that tells me I need to do Tonglen even more, because I have a fear of taking on somebody else's pain and hurting myself. And so what Pema Chodron was teaching is this ancient practice. The idea is you kind of desensitize yourself to fear, and you live in it with everybody else. It's the ultimate compassion practice, she calls it, is that I will feel your pain literally. I will literally take it on. So Tonglen, I think I would love to just do a workshop, like a standalone workshop on Tonglen, because it's a powerful one. Some of you love it, and some of you aren't sure about it. And so those that love it, maybe we could go a little deeper in it. The reason I had us put it in a vacuum was because I wasn't in person with you, and I wanted to be able to keep you safe and hold that space without you, because I know your big, bleeding, empathetic hearts, and I didn't want you to take on this weight of the world when we're already feeling burdened. And so I just had you put it in a vacuum as a holding place. So if you have questions about Tonglen, don't hesitate to email me, and that'll give me a feel for who wants to go further with it. But it's a beautiful compassion practice. And for your onward going forward, do it the way I put the instructions on the for this class, because I did it without you taking it all on. Okay. Okay, a couple more powerful tools. You've heard me talk about the power of yet, right? We're not out of this mess yet. So you add the word yet onto your doomed thoughts, and they seem less doomed, right? So I don't have my retirement account back up to where I want it yet. I don't have a job yet. We don't have freedoms yet. I'm not sure I want to go to a restaurant yet. You add the word yet, and it gives you hope. It's a hope-giving 3-letter word that really is powerful. So it sounds like a silly little practice, but mentally it literally gives you a dose of hope. So when you hear yourself saying final kind of statements like this is awful, or this isn't getting better, that's a good one. This is not getting any better yet, right? Play with the power of yet. One more is stop. The acronym STOP. Stop, take a breath, observe how you feel, and then proceed. Stop, take a breath, observe how you feel. That's that naming that makes the amygdala settle down, and then proceed. That's the prefrontal cortex. How are we going to go forward here? So stop, take a breath, observe, proceed. That your brain loves that one. So give that one to your brain as much as possible in the weeks ahead when you feel overwhelmed. And I'll put these out on our website. And then the last one I want to do with you is one that I think is the most transformative practice of all. And that is an ancient practice of loving kindness. It's called the metta prayer. You can Google many varieties of this prayer. If people are uncomfortable with it coming from Buddhism, I call it sending compassion, right? There's nothing religious to this. Nobody owns this practice, but it is a practice of sending compassion, and you bring people to mind. And I want to walk you through it. Before I do, I just want to see if I missed anything. And then we'll wrap up on the other side. Yeah, beautiful. Oh my gosh, yeah, there's so many things. Yeah, I always say it wrong. Ho'oponopono, right, is the Hawaiian practice, which is so beautiful too. These same concepts. Yeah, okay. So in loving kindness, this practice, I want you to just kind of go into your centered, quiet mind. Close your eyes. Maybe put both feet on the floor. Get comfortable and take a deep breath or two. And then I'm going to prompt you through this beautiful meditation. And instructions will be on the webpage, and you can do it later on your own with your own words. But just use today as an introduction and a practice. Take a deep breath. And first, I want you to bring to mind somebody that you love dearly, unconditional love for this person. And if it's hard to pick one, you can pick a few, like grandchildren or children. Place them in front of you. You see their faces. You imagine they're standing right before you. And you feel such deep love for them. And you're going to send them this prayer. May they feel safe. May they feel healthy. May they feel peace. May they feel loved. And now I want you to bring to mind somebody that you may not know, but you can imagine: a grocery store worker, a janitor in a hospital, somebody at a gas station, going to work, doctor, a nurse. You don't know them, but you can bring their image to mind in front of you. Choose someone now, and then send to them this prayer. May they feel safe. May they feel healthy. May they feel peace. May they feel loved. And now I ask you to bring to mind somebody that you may have a little conflict with right now, somebody that may have hurt your feelings or disappointed you. And you just feel a little pain around the relationship with this person. Bring them to mind. And then send them these wishes. May they feel safe. May they feel healthy. May they feel peace. May they feel loved. And then I invite you to place your hand on your heart and send these same beautiful, prayerful wishes to yourself. May I feel safe. May I feel healthy. May I feel peace. May I feel loved. Now I'm going to remain silent and just give you some time with God. And may the God that loves you and knows you better than you know yourself be with you every step of the way in the months ahead. Amen. I'll have instructions for that beautiful practice, and I really encourage you to do that multiple times a day. It is transforming. The testimonials of people, who see changes in relationships because of that practice continue to amaze me. So I will put that out there. Before we go into breakouts, do you have any questions, or does anyone want to share anything? I would love to hear your voices. If you want to put in the chat that you would like to be called on, please do so. Or maybe share how this has impacted you. I see some of these messages coming through. It's scary to be the one to talk. Yes, the survey is still up. I would love to hear more feedback. It helps shape future offerings too.
Hey, Ginger, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Kimberly.
Hi, I'm sorry. Chat doesn't work well for
Okay,
me.
perfect. I would love, yes, you did the right thing.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say how much I appreciated and enjoyed this class. And, you know, uh, throughout the class, there have been, times when this has just really applied to me. And I go back and I look at my notes from the week that I've collected. And I think we all do that. So I just wanted to thank you so much for having this class on Zoom and for the transformative experience it's been. And Michelle, I'm looking forward to your new class.
Very
Thank you,
good.
Kimberly. Thank you so much, Kimberly. It's always a joy to be in your presence. Yeah.
Ginger, this is Kathy Geeson.
Yes. Hi,
And thank you so kindly for doing this class. And I had gone through some very serious surgery years ago, and I had a dear friend who said, I just wish that I could take away the pain for you and carry it for you. And that is one of the most transforming things. I still remember this so many years later. She's a very dear friend, but it's a wonderful thing when somebody gives you that gift.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I would urge you, if you have those feelings, to share them with the people that you are praying for, because it is very transformative to have that happen.
Oh, Kathy, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Oh, that's
Thank you for
beautiful.
this
As the
class. It's
recipient.
been really great. And thank you, Michelle, for making it happen for us too.
Yes. Yes.
Ginger,
Yes.
this is Joyce Hirschman. Can you hear me?
Yes, Joyce.
I have to share a story. It is not, well, it has to do with Brooke again. Last week in our breakout session, I was with Brooke. Brooke, at that time, I made the comment that I had not been able to get any flowers because I have a compromised immune system, so I'm not going out at all. On Tuesday morning, I received a phone call from Brooke, who I do not know, had not met before, and she and her children brought plants to me for my back porch. Now, she, just to carry on what she was doing, she and her children every day were figuring out something they could do for someone. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate what she did and the fact that she is a living example of what we should be. And I just wanted to tell everybody that, not just her.
Oh, Joyce, that's so beautiful. And yeah, so if you couldn't hear Joyce because of sound on your end, Brooke and Joyce were in a breakout group last week, and Joyce shared that she has not been able to go out because of a compromised immune system. And so Brooke and her children every day are looking at ways they can bless somebody through this time. And so they took flowers to Joyce and left them on her porch with a note and of hope and blessing. And so Joyce wanted you all to know the power of community among these women is amazing. And I will attest to Brooke, she is the hands and feet of Christ on this earth. I have no doubt she is living into that calling in beautiful ways. She's a special, special soul. So Joyce, thank you for sharing that.
Um, I'll share a funny.
Good.
I was walking before you encouraged us to look at God in nature and taking pictures of flowers and everything. But I just couldn't go, wow, when I came up on a big black snake.
Yes. I think that's fair. I love it. Well, were you okay? Did it startle you?
Oh, startled me, yes. And I warned some other people that were going to be coming by, and I think I startled them, but I'm better me than the snake. I'm not sure.
Yes. Well, I don't know. But But you know what? I think it's okay if you don't find awe and wonder in a snake. I'm not sure any of us do. And that's a healthy worry, right? That's a healthy amygdala right there. Thank you for sharing that.
Hey, Ginger.
Yes.
So this is Brooke.
Yes.
It feels a little weird talking after that story, but thank you, Joyce. You're kind. But I was gonna share this just in what we just experienced because I thought it might be something for all of us. But I noticed in the meditation that you just led us through that it was so easy for me to picture my kids and my parents and my friends and then when you turned it to ourselves, I was like, oh, like that felt so much harder. So it felt like maybe that was God telling me, and maybe you guys, I don't know, that it feels like that's part of the takeaway is the self-compassion, which Ginger, you're obviously so awesome at leading us in. But I think for a lot of us, that's the hardest part is the compassion for ourselves and the turning it on ourselves and seeing. It's so easy for us to see God in our kids and in our friends and the people around us, but we have such a hard time seeing it in ourselves. So I don't know, I feel like there's a word for us in that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that, Brooke, because I know others are feeling the same way. I know it. The majority of us feel that. And, you reminded me of the 4 loves that I see Jesus teaching in his ministry. And it is the love of God, the love of neighbor, the love of self, and the love of enemies. And, we hear a lot of sermons and really can buy into the love of God, the love of neighbors, even the love of enemies. But that love of self, we like to just skip over. And what I have found, and I know you guys get my weekly emails that are usually to this tune of self-compassion and mindfulness, but you become more compassionate to other people. You become the woman you want to be to other people when you develop that love for self. And when you see your own beautiful soul as God sees you, and you begin to see the beautiful soul in everybody else. And so it's not a selfish endeavor. It is a compassionate work endeavor to work on those things. And I didn't realize it until my own, recognition of self-hatred and self-doubt and self-criticism deeply, deeply. So yeah, what you're hitting on is so important. And I think Jesus really was teaching that in his mercy and grace and helping people forgive themselves. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So now as we go into breakout sessions, I'm so glad you have loved these and participated in them. It's been so affirming to Michelle and I how online classes can work. So you've been the pilot test of what will be many, I think, now. So thank you for participating in the breakout sessions. Thank you for making the connections like Joyce and Brooke have made, and keep fostering these relationships. And going forward in May, you'll continue to get to know each other better, and it's just fantastic. So with that, your comments, what I would like for you to share in the breakout groups is, first of all, what you personally are taking away from this class. I think when we share that, it reminds each other of other things that they could take away. So what are you personally taking away, or what have you experienced? And then what is the one thing, narrow it down to one thing, that you really promise yourself to do coming out of this class? So we all have kind of grandiose visions of doing this every day and staying on track. And I want you to pick one so that your potential for beating yourself up for not doing it is less. Right? So pick one thing that you will do, because we can all manage to add one beautiful practice in, or one thing you want to read, but just pick one that you'll do going forward, and it'll be interesting to share that with one another. Okay, so two things. How did this class impact you, or what did you learn? And then what one thing you will do in your onward work. Okay, thank you guys so much. I truly love and adore you, and I feel like the screen just fades away when I see your faces, and that we are holding space together, and we are on this journey. And you have my email, and you will continue to get emails from me on Tuesday mornings, and please stay in contact. I'll have upcoming classes and stuff at the bottom of those emails. Michelle will continue to email you from women's ministry, and you will continue to know what's happening at the church in the months to come and what church offerings there are. And we will take it one day at a time together. I love you all. God bless you all. And now we'll go into breakout sessions. Mwah. Bye.